Welcome back to Visited by Voices Live. I'm your host, Lauren. I am visited today by a voice that speaks as quickly as I do, so everyone's going to have to keep pace with tonight's episode. You know, YouTube is a place where you have a million channels. We went from a household in my youth that had 3 networks. Well, actually, I had both the New York and Philly affiliates of 2 networks, and then I had some UHF channels. So I had basically probably 8 choices. Today, there's a virtually unlimited amount of content at our fingertips. So when you find something that you can stick with, that you never miss an upload, it's indeed a very special thing. Lady White Rabbit has an amazing channel, not just because of her content, but because of her personality and the energy and earnestness she brings to every single show. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Lady White Rabbit.
Thank you so much, and hello, everybody.
So the first question I always ask, because it's a core to what this channel is how did you originally get into horror and true crime?
If you want to know my origins in horror, I think it was before I could even remember. When I was a kid, I used to watch Are You Afraid of the Dark and the Beetlejuice cartoon and things like that. It's always been something I was interested in as a kid, because I think as at that young of an age, the only thing you can watch on TV are going to be cartoons, and it's all family friendly stuff. And I think horror was the only genre that got some kind of reaction out of me. I remembered it. I was intrigued by it. I don't remember being super scared, but it was like, it stuck with me more. So horror was always interesting to me as a kid, and it just dragged on into adulthood. It still interests me.
So I'm going to stop you right there. The Beetlejuice cartoon. Tell me I'm wrong, because I know it's heresy to talk, about Tim Burton in anything but glowing terms. The cartoon was better, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, I didn't see the movie until I was like a teenager. I didn't even know that the movie came first, and the cartoon I loved as a kid came afterward.
It definitely, and it was great. It definitely is a kid's product, but it's a very specific sort of audience that they're looking for. It was very much the outsider kid. It is the punk rock of cartoons.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. So I'm overjoyed to know it was a formative experience. How about true crime? That's the other. Your channel basically specializes in reviewing horror films in a cynical, detached, but very entertaining fashion. True crime documentaries and creepypastas, and we'll get to all 3 of those. But how did you get into true crime?
The adaptation to true crime was something that I noticed. I tried it once, and I noticed that the audience seemed to really react to it and like it and engage in it more, because it starts a conversation every time you talk about one of these cases. And the cases themselves, I try to touch mostly on unsolved and mysterious things that happen to real people that we sometimes just don't have answers for. It makes you think, and it's always interested me, mostly like disappearances and stuff like that. Like, how does somebody just vanish in mysterious circumstances? Start a conversation about it.
I always feel like with missing persons cases, it's the ultimate missing puzzle piece, because there's more story that should be on the page that led to the disappearance, and you don't get it. And there's certain people that would be driven absolutely nuts by that, like, because they want their nice compact endings. They want the freeze frame with the joke and the laugh track. And then there's us, and we kind of wish that most movies would end 5 minutes before they do. Right. Because we don't want that resolution, because it cheapens the experience that went before it.
Right. Yeah, I totally hate horror movies that try to end like that. But as we know, life is not a movie, and a lot of stories end like that. But the good thing about it is we can keep investigating it. We can keep talking about it.
Yeah, I'd say more often than not, we we don't have that great compact Sidney Prescott scream ending. Instead, we have an Eliza Lamb in the water tower ending. That's how life is.
Mm-hmm.
So another big reoccurring theme on your channel is Rocky Horror.
Mm-hmm.
Now, clearly, Rocky Horror is a big part of your life. When did you first see it?
I don't know why you'd say that.
Well, that's the other star of the show.
Oh, yeah. He is the star. I'm just his co-host. Rocky was an interesting thing in my life because when I first watched the movie, I'm not a big fan of musicals. So it took me until I was in my 20s to first see it. I had a roommate who was like, all right, I'm going to sit you down. You got to watch this thing. And I watched it, and I fell in love with it because Tim Curry makes that movie so entertaining. And I fell in love with the actor and the character. And then my roommate informed me that there was a live show that usually happens in every state around Halloween, or in some states every month. And I was like, that's interesting. Years later, I had seen a live show, and I was like, I mean, it's cute, but I'm not crazy interested in this whole experience. There's a lot of people yelling, there's throwing stuff. I can't really hear the movie, which is what I wanted to watch. I'm one of those weird people who actually like the movie. I don't think it's a garbage fire that has to be made fun of. I think it's entertaining, which is what movies are supposed to be. So I just wanted to watch the movie, and I saw this cast perform, and I was not impressed. They weren't accurate. And I would like to be an actress one day. So the idea of shadow casting and being accurate was interesting to me. Fast forward to like a year later, I found a cast that was screen accurate in Arizona, and I joined up thinking this is going to be a one-time thing. I'm just going to check out what it's like and then never do it again. Nobody's going to take me seriously doing this. And I fell in love with it almost immediately and got to play Frank. So it's something that's been stuck with me for 5 years now.
I definitely had a Rocky Horror period in my life, and I have a few years on you, a lot of years on you, and as a result, I remember when it wasn't available on video, and I remember how contentious the idea of it hitting home video was, and it did change the live experience. It definitely did, and for a while, the live experience really suffered, and then it kind of regained its footing.
Yeah.
Certainly, digital projection has helped it too, because those prints were looking pretty ratty by the early 90s. I promise you that. One point of contention between us, though, I love shock treatment. I mean, I love shock treatment.
Yeah, you and a few others. There seems to be a certain rift between people who love it and hate it.
I think taken as its own thing and not trying to compare with Rocky, because
you can't.
All the 50s retro aspects of Rocky and all of the gothic influences are gone. It's meant as a parody of media culture and even of Rocky culture. I think if you take it on its own thing, it's a really great work, and I love it because it's almost like a poison pill. And I love films that lovingly attack their audience. Cabin in the Woods is another one that does a similar thing. Yeah, Cabin in the Woods is going to end up being a stone cold classic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I really think so. No, James Frost, it is not Christina Ricci on my shirt. That is Astronautilus. Go ahead, ask the next question. So you're on your channel, the video reviews, which are my favorite thing you do. I love the true crime docs, but there's a bunch of people doing them, and I love how you do those, but your movie reviews are just like crack. Because you don't go for obvious titles. I love the fact that I was just watching your episode that you did on Death Tunnel, which, by the way, there's two different cuts of that movie out there. There's one that's a lot more linear, which is slightly worse, to be honest.
Really?
Oh yeah, because all the flaws of the movie just start popping at you. You're not just having WTF.
Oh, now I wish I reviewed that one. I want the worst one.
Oh yeah, well, it's out there, and that's what I was going to get at. How do you choose them? And obviously, you're going for bad, so you can have fun with the movie. How do you choose the movies?
Some of them I own and I've known existed for years. I think when I first started doing the movie reviews, I immediately knew I wanted to review Contracted, which is one of the first ones I did. Because when I first saw that movie, we were playing the drinking game that I explain in the movie review that I do. I have a drinking game where every time somebody does or says something stupid, you take a shot. And we were incoherent by the end of that movie. And I was like, I've got to talk about this movie. And I have a platform where I can talk about things. I wasn't sure if my audience would be okay with it because it's so different from what I was doing at the time. I was doing mostly creepypastas, and then I had started getting into the serious true crime stuff. And I was like, I don't know if they're going to be okay with me being funny. But it was one of the first ones I had to talk about. So I own some of them. Some of them I come across when I'm bored at work. I have a desk job at work where I'm allowed to watch. I'm allowed to kind of do what I want as long as I get my job done. My boss is kind of cool like that. So I watch movies all day long at work, and I come across these movies that just they're bad, and you can tell they're bad kind of from the first opening scene and what they're about. So it's basically I choose them based off of how many snarky comments can I make in my head while I'm watching them. And can I write those snarky comments down, and can people relate to it?
So how many times do you watch one of the films?
The ones that I know about already, I've seen them probably contracted. I've seen at this point like 7 times, because that's probably the only movie I've reviewed where I like it. And I'll watch it because it's entertaining to me. These other movies, usually 3 times. It's the first time I see it, and I realize this is something I have to talk about. The second time I write my script, and the third time is usually when I'm editing or putting it on my computer so I can edit it in the future. So by the end, it's about 3 times.
In some of those cases, that has to be poisonous.
It is, yeah. Especially the more boring ones. I'm like, Death Tunnel, I skipped through probably 50% of that movie because I was like, it's just girls walking around and there's nothing to comment on here. And I'm going to skip to the plot points and comment on how bad they are.
Yeah, looking for a through line in that one might be a chore. But you see, that's the thing. When I want bad film, I want it to be exploitation bad. I want it to go the full bore. I don't want it ever to be in the middle. And especially in that weird direct-to-video, late VHS, early DVD direct-to-video age, there was a ton of that stuff. That was just milquetoast.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get a lot of comments like that, and I'll absolutely take suggestions, and I watch most of the suggestions I get. I just can't. Either it's not bad enough, or the movie knows it's being bad. Like, I've gotten Velociraptor, I don't know how many, Velocipaster, how many times, but I'm like, that movie's trying to be goofy. Yeah. I don't want to comment on movies that know they're dumb. I'm trying to comment on movies that think they're amazing, and they're clearly not.
So on a similar note, a good film that wants to be bad. Have you seen Lost Skeleton of Cadaver?
No.
It's going to be your new favorite film. I'll send you a link afterwards.
Okay, please do.
It's amazing.
Okay.
Avoid its sequel because it was a one-trick pony and it didn't know it was a one-trick pony, but the first one is amazing. And Amala is one of my heroes. And I'll leave it at that, where I just left it. So you have this dry conversational tone to your videos with a lot of quirk and a lot of snark. We talked about this a little bit before we went on the air, but that's just you, right?
Oh yeah. You don't see a lot. It's just me in a room talking to a camera where I can be myself. Yeah, 100%. That's just, if you were hanging out with me, that's how I would sound.
So what is the point at which a film starts? Is there a point where you won't comment on a film while you're watching it, or are you always silent? Do you always just respect the film until it's time to record?
No. So when I'm hanging out with my roommate and we're just watching dumb horror movies, because we do that often as just like a fun thing to do, I'm constantly commenting, just like these videos. It's pretty much, if the script is me. If I'm genuinely excited to see the movie, like in a theater, I'm obviously not going to be talking. That's disrespectful to the film and the people around me. But if we're just in the comfort of my own home and we're drinking and watching a horror movie, yeah, I'll be snarking my way through every movie I see.
And I also respect the fact that you don't go for the low-hanging fruit. I kind of made reference to this before, but you're not doing the later Children of the Corner Hellraiser sequels. I mean, it's too obvious, right?
Yeah, there's so many sequels out there to the classic horror movies. I usually don't touch any of those. I'm going for stuff, and part of it's because of YouTube. I don't want to get copyright struck for some of the stuff because bigger studios will go after you for anything. My Ginger Clown review, even, which I thought was an obscure enough movie that I wasn't going to get attacked. Lionsgate came down on me so hard because of that movie. Because it was like my second review and I was putting just too much footage from the movie in there. So they came down on me, blocked it in 11 countries, and they demonetized it. So I was like, all right, I'm never doing that again. So I am trying to find movies that are not made by major studios, which is kind of hard to do. But yeah,
a lot of the major distributors have bought up entire catalogs so that even if you look at something that looks to be a small independent film, it might be owned by one of the big guys.
I think Death Tunnel is owned by Sony or something, and I couldn't believe that when I looked on the back of the box.
It's really consolidated in the last 10 years or so, and it's tough. I mean, fair light use is a difficult thing to define because U.S. copyright law, we talk about this on this channel all the time, but U.S. copyright law was not designed for the current landscape of media. It was really designed for songwriting. Yeah,
and they've come down on YouTube a lot too.
Yeah. And it's understandable in the world of songwriting to a degree, but when you get to these big multimedia, whether you're talking about film or whether you're talking about television, it gets very cloudy because, like, in the case of your videos, your defense, of course, would be that it is a critical appraisal of the film, which would put you in perfect legal standing to use clips to illustrate what you're saying. But at the point where you cross over to pure entertainment, they can claim something different. So it's always like this huge gray area that the U.S. copyright laws have not adjusted to at least tell us the rules.
Right. And no.
Yeah. Infamously, I've only ever gotten one copyright strike. And you want to, people on the channel know this, but you want to take a wild guess what got me struck?
Is video footage?
No. It's the most absurd thing ever. I promise you, when you hear it, you're going to be like, what? So
the most absurd thing I've ever heard was like copyright struck for background music in like a store. Is it something like that?
It's the flashbulb sound from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Just
really?
The sound. I think it's covered under sample laws, and still they wouldn't.
I didn't know you could get copyright struck for a sound.
And the funny thing is that sound was a library sound to begin with. But the logarithm just picked it up, thought I was using copyrighted material, and I had to take it out. So
that's good to know that doesn't happen. I guess it's such a famous sound.
It's ridiculous. I mean, if you use the chime from those Law and Order shows, I understand there's potential issues sometimes too. So I don't know. You live and learn, I guess, with YouTube, but that's the only way to go about it because there's no instruction manual anywhere.
Getting better at not being copyright claimed.
So you have 100,000 subscribers.
I do. Can't believe it myself. Yeah.
Is that ever? Does that ever freak you out? Does that ever like change the equation for you?
I don't think so. Because I mean, only about 5,000 people are watching all of my videos. So I appreciate that I have so many subscribers out there who want to hear what I have to say, but I feel like half of them are asleep. But I mean, it's incredible to me. I never thought I would get here. And honestly, it's because of a couple of videos that went viral, really, that I owe it to. And Lazy Masquerade started it off for me. So I always thank him. I owe him a lot.
So obviously YouTube strives to be a community, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. So you're a good example of what needs to happen a little bit more in this business. My channel is an upstart channel, and I reached out to you I have a fraction of your subscribers and say, hey, would you like to come on and talk about your experiences horror? And you were like, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I mean, I'm honored.
well, you shouldn't be honored, but it's just one of those things. Like, I'm better known in a different realm than YouTube. Still, I'm known for my writing in certain circles better than I am for this. But it's one of those things. Like, in that world, you know, if a writer wants to help out another writer, he gives them a blurb for the top of their book, and that can be huge. That happens like kind of like regularly. YouTube, it seems a little bit harder to get people to help out the next guy. So first of all, thank you for being one of the good guys. And second of all, just like, how do we combat that so that it's a platform that's not just every man for himself?
I mean, when I was a little guy with 400 subscribers, I reached out to probably 20 bigger YouTubers, and only one of them replied to me. And it wasn't even a DM to him. He replied to my comment in his video's comment section. All of these other guys, I tried emailing, I tried IMing on Twitter, and I just wouldn't get the time of day. I mean, a little channel, 400 subscribers, and the way they see it, and to an extent, I understand. If I'm asking you to collaborate with me and I have nothing to offer you, I don't have even subscribers to offer you, to them, they see it as you're asking me to do work for you for free. Because now I have to figure out how to do a collaboration with you. I have to put your voice on my channel, and that's going to get you views, but it's not going to get me anything. So why would I help you? So how do we fix it? More people like Lazy Masquerade. Just be a nice person, pay it forward, help one small guy out, and they will sing your praises forever. I guarantee it. A lot of us know how people helped us. And maybe we'll do it for the next person then, because somebody helped me.
Definitely. I've been every video encouraging everyone who watches, if they've been putting off starting their own channel or starting to write their first novel or getting a film production together, learning a fine art, picking up a paintbrush, whatever that thing is, I'm encouraging everyone to go out and do it. And the more people out there that you can reach out to give you a leg up, the better. That's why I'd like to see the format, the platform be a little bit easier to enter, I guess is how I'm putting it.
It's definitely hard.
I've been fortunate, I feel, in the growth I've had on the channel, but it's a slog for everyone, and it's even a slog for the people who've made it. To then the challenge just seems to change into getting people who not only have subscribed but are actually watching the videos, and maybe watching the ads before the videos.
Right? Yeah, not ad blocking.
Yeah. So, which I completely understand, but I also feel like it's not sustainable forever if everyone's ad blocking.
Right. Yeah. YouTube's becoming harder and harder to make a living off of. I mean, I definitely can't. I have a full-time job on top of it, which is unfortunate because I've got so many people asking me to do longer videos, and I'm like, man, I wish I could. I wish I could upload every day like some YouTubers. But you guys have to understand, I work Monday through Friday, and I only do YouTube stuff. I'm writing scripts while I'm at work. I'm doing research while I'm at my real job, and I do all the editing and the recording in just 2 days on the weekend when I'm supposed to be taking time off. I can't dedicate more time to this as much as I'd love to, because YouTube is, unless you're cramming sponsorships into every video and you're getting 100,000 views per video at least, you can make a living off the platform.
I hope at some point I have those problems. So switching gears a little bit, because I think everyone would be just fascinated to know, since we see what you find worthy of ridicule in the horror genre. You don't often talk about your favorite things in the genre, though. Outside of Rocky Horror, which is adjacent.
Yeah, Rocky is a unique thing. I don't know how that became like an obsession in my life, but here we are. I would have to say, if you're going to generalize what I love about horror, it's hard to be like specifically this movie or that movie, because they're all so different. I suppose, I mean, my favorite genre within horror is psychological terror. If it really messes with your head and does a successful job of freaking me out, I love it. Like Cabin in the Woods is one of those like borderline parody movies, but it really messes with your head. And that movie's interesting too because it explains a lot about horror movies within it. And I love that. I love the critical thinking that you have to suddenly put into it because you're like, you're right. Oh my God, people do get separated in every single horror movie, and maybe this is the reason why. So that's another unique movie. But I suppose that would be it, is like if something made me stop and go, oh my God, that weirded me out, then it's on the right track of being one of my favorite things.
So something along the lines of something like a Jacob's Ladder, obviously the original, not the remake.
I just saw the remake. I didn't even know that existed until I was browsing Netflix the other day, and I was like, this is a thing?
I have not seen it yet, but at some point, my worst, most necrotic sense of curiosity will take over, and I'll actually watch it.
I can honestly say, like, I don't honestly remember much about the original, so I couldn't tell you how accurate it is to it. It was a movie. I mean, if it doesn't relate properly to Jacob's Ladder, then it was just another movie. I don't think it was bad. I just thought it was a PTSD movie. One of my favorites is 1408. Yeah.
The King adaptation?
Yeah. The book is great too. But that movie was one of those that just make you go, oh my God, what the hell? And just, yeah, that one. And then Secret Window is another one of my favorites. Again, I like King. I don't know. Wasn't on purpose. I just like all of those movies.
Do you read a lot of King?
Yeah. I think the only like collection of one author I've got is Stephen King. Mostly his short stories because I don't really have the patience to read his 700-page novels. But yeah, those short stories I love.
The 700-page ones are the short ones.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll never forget going to the books. Never forget going to the bookstore and seeing Insomnia on the shelves, and I honestly thought there was like 35 copies like piled up, because it was facing. And I walked up and picked up, and I realized there was 3.
Oh, geez.
And I was just like, oh God, what am I putting myself into?
It's gonna be a while.
Yeah, I mean, but then again, I've also been the person who doesn't want a good novel to end, and someone like Dan Simmons with The Terror, oh my God, if that book had been another 1,000 pages, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. So if you really hit on all cylinders, length is no issue to me. But I love early King. I start to get wavy in the 90s, and I really haven't read much new King. I've just moved on to other authors who I think are a bit hungrier, and I think the work shows that hunger.
Yeah, for sure.
So the opposite has to be true too. You watch a lot of bad cinema. So least favorite film in the genre. Because otherwise you're just going to say Battlefield Earth, and I don't want to hear that.
I don't know if I've ever identified like a least favorite movie. That's interesting. It's ironically probably one I own. It was so bad I had to own it. I don't know if it's my least favorite, but I think part of the reason it's in my bottom tier is Ginger Clown, because it's insulting to me personally. Like I hate that Tim Curry's in it. I hate that he isn't himself. He's this big dumb puppet. I hate that the ending makes no sense and it looks like they just ran out of money and there's just no conclusion. I hate a lot of things about it. I hate that it makes no sense. There's bad acting. There's all sorts of things to hate about it. But it's just, in the end, I was like, what did I get out of this? And I was excited for this movie too. I heard about it before it came out. I was like, Tim Curry's voice is in it, along with a lot of other horror icons, like Chucky's voice is in it. What's his name? Bishop from Aliens in it. Just like, it should have been a great time, but it wasn't.
It might have been something that they were paid to do some voice acting in a hotel room during a convention kind of thing. That stuff happens. Stuff happens.
Such a waste of talent. Anything that wastes good talent, I'm not a fan of. Just like put his name on the front so you can sell it, but he's in the movie for 3 seconds and it's awful. Don't do that.
Yeah, and I'm a guy who wants to like bad films.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, stuff comes. I haven't seen Ginger Dead. Is that the title of it?
Ginger Clown.
Ginger Clown. I'm gonna
Yeah.
write it down. I know you don't want me to actually waste my time, but
oh no, go for it. Understand why I hate it, please.
I'll commiserate later.
A weird Hungarian film.
So
tell Lionsgate I sent you, and I don't like that they blocked it.
Well, they're probably trying to figure out how to make any money off of it. That's probably the thing. You probably made.
I had to go find it online. They can't make money off of it unless you're looking for it.
They probably made more off of you reviewing it than they've made off of sales. So
exactly, I probably could have sold some copies for them. Why did they block it?
Come on, Lionsgate, come on. Put that Saw money to some proper use. Stop going after Lady White Rabbit.
We're going to be like, oh, I was going to buy Ginger Clown. Now I'm not going to because she told me not to. Come on.
That's the kind of film that you look at those 50 packs at Walmart for $7.99 on DVD and go, wait, Ginger Clown's on it. Fuck that. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I've never even seen it in this country. I've never even found it at a Zia. I look for it online because there was no like release for it really. It was just like, hey, it exists now. We're going to pretend like it doesn't.
My friend and peer, Mr. Christian Hannah Horror, would like to point out that he feels that Ginger Clown is better than Halloween 78.
Oof.
He's not being serious. He's trolling, but I just wanted to make his letters, his words big on screen, for he has to live with that now.
All right, that's fine.
So how about, are you a theater goer or are you a home video consumer mostly, or where are you at this point?
I would say more home video. I'm an introvert, and my first job was at a movie theater, so I think it made me not like movie theaters in general. But if one specific horror fan friend of mine wants to go and the movie is new, I'll absolutely go with him. But I mean, the comfort of your own home with your own beers and your own friends, I think is way better.
So you have to tell me some bad experiences from the movie theater days, because that sounds wonderful.
Oh boy. I mean, everything people tell you about working at a movie theater that's awful is true. I worked at Regal. I don't care if I say it. They don't exist in Arizona anymore. They were United Artists at one point, and they became Regal. I worked there for 4 years. It was the second longest job I ever owned. The current one being my number one now. It took me 3 years to become a manager after begging for 2 of those years because they were sexist. They wouldn't let me be a manager.
Wait, can I stop you there? Like, what was the rationale there? Because I just don't see how that enters into it. I can kind of understand, if you're hiring for a Hooters, the guys probably have a disadvantage and it's probably legitimate. But managing a movie theater is just, it doesn't seem specific to any sex.
It was partially because a girl went psychotic in the role. She became a manager, and she had some real jitters, some temper issues, and she ended up blowing up at a customer and getting fired over it. And then they thought every girl we ever make a manager after that's going to do the same thing. And I was like, I'm the quietest person in this movie theater. Why would you think I'd blow up? I'm scared of customers, if anything. I'm not gonna blow up on a customer, but they didn't want to try doing the same thing.
Well, certainly you've heard how explosive estrogen can be, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like that calm, passive, masculine testosterone, which is always completely under wraps.
Oh yeah. You guys are always so chill.
I can't say I've always been chill in my life, but I got to tell you something. My life is built around the idea of respect until someone's lost it.
Yeah. I mean,
I've done some pretty rough jobs where my job involved confrontation, but you have to know how to turn that stuff off and on. I mean, you can't live a life that way.
I mean, I've never been aggressive in a job before. I'm more scared of people than anything.
Well, take me along when you go to buy your next car. I'll take care of the salesperson. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Because I can definitely handle that.
For sure.
So what would be the single worst experience besides being, turned over for promotions at the movie theater? Tell me a story.
Well, it was a whole week of hell, and the setup is our general manager went out of town for a week. We had just hired this manager who used to work at a Harkins, which was a much busier, much more insane movie theater than our dying Regal Entertainment. So this manager came in and he was like the temporary GM while she was gone. And during this week, he had control of our schedule. So what we usually had was like a couple of managers working at one time, and then a couple of floor people in concession, a floor person in box, and a floor person ripping tickets at the door. That's how our schedule worked. It had worked fine for the 4 years out there. This manager comes in out of nowhere, and he's like, we're going to work everybody one manager at a time with one person on every duty. And that was hell because a manager should be on the floor and upstairs running projection. And we had these old projectors. You run the film through it. It's not digital like it is now. So every film you start has like a good 15-minute preps. So I'm a manager running the theater by myself during the day for the first time in my life. I'd been doing this for about a year, so I knew how to handle a lot of garbage, but I was getting calls like every 5 minutes from downstairs telling me a customer to talk to me because they were complaining about an employee in our concession stand who had some disorders that made him very unfriendly towards customers. But we had nobody else to replace him with because we also worked in a theater where we didn't have that many employees and nobody could come in and replace him. So I'm dealing with going downstairs every 5 minutes to apologize to customers for an employee that I can't get rid of and having to give away free tickets while I have a scheduled movie thing to run upstairs. If I'm late running a movie, other people start complaining, which did happen. And then when things couldn't get any worse, a belt on one of our projectors snaps in half. So now I'm down a whole movie and I have to tell a whole theater of people to go home and I have to give them all passes. I was like fuming by the time the next poor manager who came in after me. I was like a friend of mine. He was like walking in with some tuna salad that he was talking about. And I was like, you stop right there because I am so pissed off. You're getting over and I'm leaving. And I just stormed out of the building. It was the worst experience of my life.
That sounds pretty awful.
Oh, God.
So were you, I mean, this is, if you were talking back in traditional 35 millimeter days, were you plattering films? Were you doing the whole prep for them?
Yeah, 3 platforms, splicing the film together and putting them on the platforms. We were the last theater in Arizona to do this.
Well, you were fighting the good fight because I'm not a really huge fan of digital projection, but the amount of work sounds like they needed to. It sounds like they just needed to have someone devoted to just that, and that shouldn't have been a manager function. That should have been a projectionist, the lost art and job title. Yeah,
most other theaters who did this had a dedicated projectionist, but Regal was we were so strained for employees that they needed managers to do everything. So I would have happily just stayed up and movies. I love doing it. I hated dealing with the people downstairs, so I would have loved that.
Well, don't hate me, but I do belong to the Regal Club up here, and
do you?
Yeah, so for $20 a month, I'm seeing unlimited movies when movie theaters are open, which is not the case right now.
We didn't even have that deal back when I worked there.
It's only been the last like 6 months or so.
Oh yeah, our theater last closed down like 8 years ago. We haven't had a Regal here since.
Yeah, Regal is not my closest theater, but for that price tag, I can't really beat it.
I get you. Yeah, it was definitely cheap.
And we all like cheap, right?
Oh yeah.
There's certain things like medications we probably don't like cheap. So physical media, on your show, I've seen you held up everything from DVD copies. So I think you've even held up a few VHSs, haven't you?
I haven't reviewed something that's just a VHS yet, and it's mostly because I don't have a VCR. They're really hard to come by.
Got to hit those Goodwills up. They always get them through. But just have them plug it in there, make sure it works before you go home, please.
That's true.
Because so do you buy a lot of movies in physical form now, or have you moved over to streaming mostly?
All the movies that I've done reviews on, well, actually, that's not true. If you can find it on Netflix, or I get a couple of them from Tubi TV, I don't have physical copies. Anything that you can't find, if you just search for it and it's not free online, I do buy a physical copy. which hurt sometimes.
Because then you have those physical copies.
And I spent real money for them.
So you troll on eBay for the lowest possible price, or do you just bite the bullet and just, yeah, okay.
Yeah, with Alice in Murderland, that's the only way I could find it.
Wow. It might have been better if you hadn't.
Yeah, it's possible. That movie was free. It was on Netflix at some point. That's why I first saw it on Netflix like a year or so ago. And I was like, why is Netflix streaming this garbage? It's the worst. It's the worst thing I've ever seen. And funny is I think it was made at the studio that I now perform Rocky at, so I only have us to blame for it.
And you are in the Frank role in Rocky Horror.
Yeah, I am. And I go to cons like that too, if cons ever came back.
So you have both the Frankenfurter costume for cons, but you also have your Lady White Rabbit costume, yes?
Yeah, I do.
So how do you decide which to wear?
It's usually going to be Frank because I can't easily talk to people or drink with the rabbit mask on. It's way less of a casual setting. I use that costume. Of course, the last time I used it was at a haunted house. It's where it came from. I made it for that. And I'll use it if I'm going to be moving somewhere because it's much more impressive, in my opinion, if I'm crawling with it on. I usually use it at pure horror festivals or conventions where I can get... Sometimes at like Mad Monster, I can get like the guests' attention and they'll want me to come over and take a picture with them, which is a weird, surreal thing. But if it's just going to be something casual, I'll go with Frank because it's cooler. It's sometimes more comfortable except for the heels, and less sweaty, and I can be more casual with it on.
So we know that, and this led from that, I'll get back to it, but we know that the online world can be a place where the worst in people come out, the keyboard warriors, the people who are letting the id in them a little too close to the front cortex of their brain. So what has been the worst comment that's ever been left on one of your videos? I've gotten some bad ones and they ruin my day, and I just try. Eventually I'll forget them, of course, because my nice comments greatly overtake the mean ones, which I completely love and appreciate. I think the latest horrible comment that I got, I actually tweeted about because it upset me so much. It was like, who let an autistic woman host this show or something like that, and I was upset about it just because that's rude to people with autism, and I was like, it's more rude to them than it is to me. So I pinned the comment for a while so people could attack it, and then I banned him. Unfortunately, we've had experiences where, you ban them, but all they have to do is have another Gmail account and they're back in business. Yeah,
I mean, if they really want to keep attacking my channel, I suppose. Yeah. I mean, after a few days, I don't read the comments because of people like that. I learned that with my Shirley Temple video. That was the first video I stopped reading comments on because I was like, there's so many coming in. And that video reached so many people outside my fan base that I was getting a lot of mean comments, and they were just ruining my day left and right, so I stopped reading them.
Now, that video got pretty heavily promoted by YouTube because I remember that being everywhere for about a week and a half. I mean, it was like it almost felt like a sponsored video, which I'm not saying you did that, but it was that present. So that had to be a pretty big video for you.
Yeah, it's I think at 8 million views or something right now. I kind of stopped looking at it. It goes in waves. You can see the analytics of it just go like that. I don't know why. I've been trying to do that again ever since. I've made other horrors behind that YouTube likes, but they don't like it as much, and they demonetize them a lot more than they let them through for some reason. I'm not quite sure why that is.
Oh, I don't think humans are making these decisions at YouTube at all. I think the machines.
Oh, sure. I'm just trying to figure out what it is about the bot that's making them demonetize them.
YouTube basically is Skynet at this point. I mean, the only difference is it probably makes more sense than something Jim Cameron wrote. But sorry, I have to attack Jim Cameron once a video. That's a rule.
Totally fine.
So it doesn't sound like you've had an actual like online stalker situation, at least. It sounds like if that video was your worst situation, I think that you might have gotten a little bit luckier than a lot of YouTubers out there.
Well, yeah, with mean people stalking me, I haven't noticed the same person come in at me twice. If they are, I don't notice you. I have gotten the occasional good fan who sort of oversteps their IM bounds and continually bug me for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I've had to block them, which I don't like to do at all. But you know, I don't know who they are, and I don't really want to be bothered by them constantly when I'm trying to live my life. So it's the closest thing I've gotten to like a stalker.
Well, let's keep it like that because they're not fun situations.
Yeah.
So is there obviously the horror side of it we pretty much covered. Now the true crime is kind of a sensitive subject for a lot of people because there are real victims. In some cases, there's real victim families that are still out there. Do you make any did you give that any weight when you're producing your videos, or do you just feel like it because they're public stories, you have free reign, or what's the level of sensitivity there?
I think the video I'm actually writing right now was the first one where I had to stop and be like, wait, should I say full names or should I just abbreviate all the names or, you know, initials only? And this is the first video where I actually am going to do that. I'm going to censor it a little bit because it's an ongoing investigation that's been opened recently, and it's happening right now, and people are kind of being attacked all over the place for it. And I don't want to add to that. I'm here just to give facts and to spread information. I'm not taking sides, and I'm not trying to hurt anybody. So a lot of the cases I've covered in the past, I wanted to make sure they were, I mean, a lot of the cases I've covered, the victim is no longer with us, unfortunately. That's why I'm covering it. And in that case, I want people to know their name. I want them to know who they were. And remember them and understand what happened to them. Because a lot of these cases I cover, nobody knows about them. And that's a shame because you don't learn this stuff in school. And I want to make sure that they know who they were. So always the victims, I'll say their full names, and I'll make sure I describe who they were. But as far as this case I'm covering right now, there will be a little bit of censorship. I mean, you can just look it up and find out who I'm talking about, but I don't want to be the one who's adding to the hate.
So there's a lot of channels out there. I mean, I don't subscribe to a ton of real crime channels, but I have a few, and it's usually because I like the host and what the host does. But there are some that play a kind of a dual role, I feel, and it's none of the ones I'm a fan of. So like something like That Chapter, which I love as well. Yeah. That's not what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But there are some that are almost, I feel, exploiting the crimes, and I get kind of uncomfortable, especially when they're not just murder sprees, but they're sexual crimes and that kind of thing. I feel like that's a different subject, and maybe those are things that are better left for more professional people than the average YouTuber who's working at Burger King's drive-through during the day and then going at home at night to talk about a spree rapist in Milwaukee.
Yeah, because you looked it up a little bit and you got some information on it real quick. And I've felt like that about myself every now and then. Like, why do I have the authority to talk about this? I'm not a professional. And I want to make sure I'm getting all the right information, but there's always going to be comments saying, you got all of this wrong. Here's what actually happened. And I'm like, you know what? Good on you for thinking you know more than my week's worth of research. Fine. And I totally get that. There are people out there where you can tell they're just trying to make $1 off of a subject that people are going to Google. And I'm trying not to sound like that at all.
No, I think you do it very well. I wouldn't be a subscriber to your channel if not, because as much as I like real crime documentaries, I don't even like those shows that are on A&E like constantly. Which, okay, well, here's this family. We'll take you step by step, and at the end, we'll try and make it at this kind of Hollywood drama out of it.
Oh yeah.
And it just seems like there's a pattern there or a formula, and there can't be a formula to the real stories. So something artificial is happening. So I'm not even a fan of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that you have to be a little bit sensitive to.
Yeah. And I've seen some of those shows where they just like the sound effects they use are just like too loud and like overproduced. I know exactly what you're talking about. And yeah, you're right. Some YouTubers like to do that too. And I'm like, you know what? My message is I'm just here to give you guys this information because nobody else is telling you about it. So here it is.
And when you do those videos, it definitely has a different tone than anything else on your channel. For instance, your creepypastas have a more morose tone to them, but it's still a little playful. You can still hear that you're still having fun with it. It's just the tone has to be how it is to be effective. But there's a seriousness, and there's none of that. There's none of that winking at the camera in your
right. Yeah, well, I don't want to make it a joke. None of those stories I want to sound like I'm being insensitive to them, because they were serious and they should be respected. If I put a joke in there, like I think I mentioned nuking the Cecil Hotel, it's because who's gonna be like, how insensitive of you to say that you should nuke that hotel?
That's such a great history.
It's such a great place to live.
I think the Chelsea Hotel in New York might be giving it a run for money if you want to get
maybe
down.
That's another series I should do, is just dilapidated hotels, because that's interesting to me too. Just how some ideas that just went downhill so fast. The potential was there, something happened, so now it's dilapidated and abandoned.
One of the craziest documentaries, and I saw it way before the YouTube days, so I don't know how you track it down at this point, because it was a television thing, was about the 60s communes and how most of them continue to exist, but now they have like maybe half a dozen people living in them, trying to recapture the 60 glory days, but they're really they're socially just so far gone, and they're in their own society. It's really, really a creepy subject. I wish to God I knew where that was, because it was fascinating.
Yeah, it's similar to like the cult stuff. Like I and some topics I know they're overdone. The Elisa Lam, it's so talked about too much, and I don't want people being like, why are you talking about this too? And the honest answer is, it interests me. Like, I want to talk about the Jonestown cult. I know there's a whole professional documentaries that are out there on it, but maybe that's why I want to talk about it, because I've never spoken about it before.
And I'm so proud that in my promo for this episode, I used Jim Jones as the voiceover. I didn't know you were going to do that, but it works. It all makes sense now. It was planned, but not.
Yes.
The Jim Jones story is amazing. It's incredibly sad, and there's a weird racial component to it that doesn't get talked about, because Jim Jones touched about 65% of that congregation was African American, and were promised a lot of things that are actually right in the news today in a different context. It's a little bit scary and crazy and really, really relevant.
Yeah.
Which these things tend to be. It's kind of amazing as a society that, like, hitchhiking in the 70s is always my example. In the 70s, it's hard to find people who didn't hitchhike at some point. And there's a lot of reasons for that have changed, but now today, you look at anyone that's hitchhiking, you think they are insane or a psycho themselves. I mean, immediately, right? Because who would do that? But it's just kind of a crazy thing that socially we've changed so much. But yet, you still hear stories like, "Oh, a guy came to my door and he said he just needed to use the phone because because his car ran out. I guess I let him in and he killed the family." Yeah, and it's the same behavior though. It just moved from one thing to the next. It's just really crazy.
Yeah, it's the keeping your doors unlocked. It's not a thing anymore. So
no, but it hasn't necessarily made people safer from home invasion.
No.
Which is the interesting thing. Crime is way down from those decades today, at least those types of crime. But when they occur, they're still happening at the rate. It's kind of crazy. So the third part of your channel is the creepypasta. And this is going to be the hard part of our conversation, I think. As a guy who writes fiction, I have a weird relationship with creepypasta.
Okay.
In some cases, like really bad creepypasta, and I'm sure you've come across your share. it's kind of an insult to the art of writing.
Oh yeah. But they're not writers.
No, and that's what I constantly have to tell myself is they're trying to be part of a different thing. But I think you do a really good job with the forum, and I think that those are compelling episodes. I just it's such a weird world for me because for every good channel or a good artist who's really got their finger on the tip of what will work in that format, which basically a creepypasta is a long form joke, but rather than be funny, it's horrifying or there's a twist or a shock. How did you get into that, and what are your feelings on the whole thing?
So I first heard about creepypastas through my roommate telling me about Slender Man. I had never heard about it before. He told me the origin of it. He was like, "Have you ever seen this picture before?" And I saw it, and I was like, "What is this?" And he's like, "Well, this guy won a contest for making this photoshopped picture, and then it became a story, and it became a big thing on the internet." And I was like, "Really?" So I started looking more into the story that developed off of that one photo. And I was like, that's really interesting. And then I think from there, I started looking into lost episode creepypastas because the idea that something you watched when you were a kid, Courage the Cowardly Dog or Rugrats, has a dark side that's been buried and hidden and tried to be destroyed from the public, as fake as it sounds, it was an interesting idea. So after I had finished reading every lost episode I possibly could find, started listening to Mr. Creepypasta when I was at work, and that would get me through my days. And then that just developed into, this is interesting. Why can't I do this too? Because I've always wanted to be some kind of voice actress, and it feels to me like a form of voice acting because you have to kind of either become a narrator or the character, and that's kind of how I had fun with it. I was real nervous at first, but I started becoming more of some of those stories where I have to be a psychopath or I have to lose my mind. I have the most fun with them because it feels more like acting than anything else I've ever done. And then I've even written a couple creepypastas, just two, because of all these years, I didn't want to be somebody who accidentally wrote a bad one. But there's so many, because there's so many bad ones out there that all follow a cliche, or you can tell it's just a 10-year-old trying to copy everybody else with a formula.
Yeah, and a lot of them are just warmed over EC Comics, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Usually throwing technology in there at some point to make it seem relevant.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, listen, I think it's an interesting form. It's not something I could ever do. I'm kind of tied to what I do, and that's it. But so you said that you'd like to be an actress, quote, someday?
Well, yeah.
So is that something that's relatively new in your life, or has that been a long-term goal?
I've always wanted to, I suppose, entertain. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a Spice Girl.
Which Spice Girl did you want to be?
At first it was Posh, and then it became Ginger after she left.
Well, Jerry Halliwell would be the correct answer.
Yeah, right?
Because she's the insane one, and everyone likes the insane one.
Well, she was so outgoing and so not me, which is why I believe I gravitate towards characters like Frankenfurter, because he's the opposite of my personality. And when I get to play him on stage, I get to be somebody I'm super not for a short period of time. And it's not only that, but it makes other people insanely happy to see me at conventions like that. It's a character they grew up with and they love. And their excitement fuels my excitement. It's just a contagious thing. But I like the entertainment aspect of it. I like getting people excited about something I've done or said or educated them on. And acting has just become, okay, that's the form of entertainment I want to do. And specifically, people think I have a unique voice, which I do. I want to voice act, because that's also something that largely Tim Curry did as his career.
Oh, absolutely. You recognize Tim Curry's, the tenor of his voice, immediately.
Yeah.
Did he ever work for Disney? Did he ever do a Disney character?
He was in the Three Musketeers.
Yeah.
And then...
well, I meant really the animated side.
I'm sure he did something. He has so many animations under his belt.
Just seems like he's an obvious choice.
Because I know for everybody thinks Ferngully's Disney. It's not. That was actually the first time I ever heard his voice as a kid, was in Ferngully, and I realized it later. I was like, oh my god, I've seen Ferngully. It was like my jam as a kid. I watched it when I had pink eye at home.
Ferngully is one of those weird movies because you look back on it now and you're like, Robin Williams did that as a what? What? How does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then of course Jim Cameron remade it. Anyway, so a friend of the show, Jamie, wants to point out that when she was a kid, she wanted to be Olivia Newton-John.
Nice.
And I never wanted to be Olivia Newton-John.
No?
Yeah, much more of a Juice Newton type guy, I think, really.
Nice.
Yeah. So is that something that you think you're going to actually start going to auditions and trying for? Or, I mean, there's a lot of independent films that are always looking. And you can make, at those conventions, you could always make contacts, just, not to the scary, creepy guys.
Right. I definitely think YouTube is a big help in that. My biggest problem has been I live in Arizona, and a lot of those kind of jobs, you kind of have to be closer to California or I suppose New York to get them. But if anybody has an audition that, I mean, again, it's part of that whole like going to auditions in my introversy. So I was like, can I just record myself speaking and then send it to you? Like, it's so much more comfortable. You can hear how I actually perform when I'm comfortable and not having to perform at you when I'm shaking and nervous. But if there's auditions where I can do that, I've been on some voiceover casting call site that has got me nothing, but it's fun to audition for them, I suppose. So I don't know if I can get in touch with somebody who knows how to help me out from Arizona.
Well, I don't know if there's any Arizonians that are currently in the chat. Of course, I only see the people who are actually commenting, so there's a lot of people out there that perhaps should reach out to you at some point.
Hey, I'm here.
So what are you looking forward to on your channel? What's the next couple months look like for you?
I mean, that makes it sound like I plan anything out on my channel. I mean, I'm definitely getting. I took a week off a couple weeks when I hit 100K. I took that week off right before I did the collaboration with Mort, which was a really fun thing to do. And then I'm just going to get back into some true crime and find some more movies to tear apart.
Well, there's no end to that.
Pasta thing. My channel hits its anniversary every Halloween. I started it on Halloween, and every Halloween I try to do something big. There is a large. Baraska was my really long series. I have the first one I think is 2.5 hours long, and Baraska V is like 3 hours long. And I posted both of those on my anniversaries. So I kind of wanted to do that again with a return to Wizard of Oz creepypasta that I've been looking at for several years. So I might bring back the creepypasta format just for my anniversary this year. And
because you kind of just mentioned it there, are you familiar with the term kinder trauma?
Kinder trauma? I don't think so.
So a kinder trauma is something from your childhood that was on the surface innocuous, but deeply disturbed you and has kind of haunted you since childhood. So Return to Oz is one that gets mentioned a lot by people, or the Never-Ending Stories horse scene, which I personally love because I don't like horses. Do you have any kinder traumas?
I don't know if I would call it trauma now. It's something that really freaked me out when I was a kid. It's a specific episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Where a kid gets trapped in a mall and it becomes a pinball. And that's kind of the whole twist, I suppose. But for some reason, I kept having reoccurring nightmares after I saw the episode. I don't have nightmares about horror media too often. But this one episode, for some reason, kept giving me nightmares of being trapped in a mall. And the idea of being lost in there without my parents, all alone and no way to get out, really disturbed me. And it stuck to me to this day. Like, the idea of getting locked in a mall at night kind of concerns me.
Have you revisited the episode?
Yeah, I've seen it lately. It's awful.
Did that help the trauma, or did it just contextualize it? Or
I think
again, you
it
don't like the word trauma, but
right. The memory of it stayed the same, but I guess it made me feel better to know that I suppose I remembered it wrong. Because when you're a kid, I suppose you do that. If you see something just once, you'll remember it wrong a little bit. I remembered it a lot scarier than it was. And I guess just the feeling of like the dreams that occurred afterwards stuck with me more than just the episode. But it's nice to know that it wasn't as scary as I thought it was.
so we have a few questions in the chat for you. Of all the true crime stories, which kept you up at night the most? Comes from Jacob McCullough.
Ooh, I think the Dardine family murders, which was one of the true crime stories that I covered, had to have been one that disturbed me the most, because there was never any conclusion to it, and it was so brutal, and the fact that people can do that to each other is rather disturbing to me.
Now, is that the case that was the basis for The Strangers?
Yes, I believe it was.
I think so.
But I believe they also blame that on the Manson murders.
Yeah, well, the Manson murders are just a social change moment that everyone likes to use as a push pin on the map, you know?
Yeah.
You kind of answer this in part, but James Frost asks, what are the ladies' top 3 favorite films? I guess regardless of genre.
Well, I know 1408 is one, A Secret Window are my two go-to films. And then the third one is probably Mean Girls. I don't know. Super contrasting, but I've seen that movie a million times and I'm never gonna not love it.
I'm a Heathers guy. It's my 3rd favorite film.
Nice.
Oh yeah. So it seems like there's the whole rift. It's almost like the Sharks and the Jets about Mean Girls versus Heathers. It's not saying you can't love both, but at some point you got to pick a side.
Yeah, well, I know where I stand in the burn book.
Well, we're on that one, but I didn't. And I do have a knife, but we're states and states apart, so you're probably pretty safe.
I have a tiny doll, so.
Well, that doll has done shit though in your videos.
It's true. He's unpredictable, that one.
He reminds me of the stuffed animal in the pit, in that, you know, you think that it's just all part of the game, but it ain't.
Yeah. Try to make people not know what's going to happen next with that doll.
Also, your thoughts on Phantom of the Paradise while we're doing the holy trinity of weird musicals?
I have not seen.
I'm horrified.
Sorry.
No. You need to change that too.
Okay.
Oh my God, yes. So Brian De Palma directing a horror musical with music and a performance by Paul Williams.
Okay.
You should be sold.
Yeah, I've got to watch it with my horror buddy.
Oh yeah. It's amazing. The soundtrack is unreal. And have you seen Repo, the Genetic Opera?
Yeah.
Are you a fan?
Yeah. Actually, the first on-stage performance I ever did was a shadow cast of Devil's Carnival, and the director showed up for that, so that was pretty neat. We did a little bit of Repo as well.
I always wish that Repo had the legacy of a Rocky Horror for this age. And it seems like, again, Lionsgate, your favorite people, just didn't support it the way they should have.
Lionsgate, you silly bitch.
Hey, listen, they used to be Artisan. That's the problem. Remember those cats? They released Blair Witch and thought the world was going to be good for them, but they never bothered to follow it up with something of that caliber.
Oh, no, that's a shame. Doesn't Blair Witch have sequels now that I have to look at?
The second Blair Witch is really underrated and good. It's very different. And then there's a kind of reboot, remake, sequel thing.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
From a couple years ago. That's pretty forgettable, unfortunately.
Of course.
I say that, and now the comments are going to start going crazy because someone loves that film, I'm sure.
How dare you, sir? That's this person's favorite movie, right?
Listen,
right
my
here.
opinions are my opinions. I'm probably wrong. I'm the guy who bashes aliens all the time. Clearly, I'm wrong.
I just saw the second Aliens for the first time. Fun fact. I'm getting into because I'm real. I'm real bad at watching classic stuff because people tell me I should, and I'm one of those people that are like, well, everybody loves it, so I'm not going to watch it. So Aliens was one of those where I was like, I've never seen it. Let's start watching because I do want to get a dog one day and I want to name it Ridley, and I have to know why I'm naming it that.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of Aliens at all. I love the third film, and I think you'd like the third film because it's really, really, really dark.
That's the next one that's up, so I'm going to watch it next.
Yeah, that's a series that gives you whiplash because the first film is obviously dark and scary, and you love the characters, and it's really tense, and it just keeps getting tenser and tenser. It does it does both the things that body count thrillers should do. Start with a relatively big cast and end with a very small cast, so it looks like a pyramid. And also visually, in the beginning of the film, we have all these huge landscapes, and we have the ship is being shot in wide lenses, and we get smaller and smaller, and ultimately we corner a character in her underwear down to a closet.
Right.
So it's like the textbook example of how to do a body count thriller properly. And then you go from that to Aliens, which is like, just testosterone and shooting things with guns. And then the third film is a completely nihilist film. It's like nothing happy happens in that film. So if you're looking for one-liners, you're not getting them.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, that's my thing, though. The darker the movie, the better for me. And then the fourth film is like a comic book. It's like a Marvel movie. So,
wow. Yeah, that is whiplash. My God.
Yeah. And I respect that they always did something different, but on the same rate.
They were trying to see what worked. Honestly, I get it.
Yeah. Let's see if did I miss anything over here? Or nope, I guess not. If you have any final questions for Lady White Rabbit, put it in the chat. So what are you working on right now?
Like I said, I got a video coming out on Monday. It's another true crime that's been recently reopened. The Tamla case that I found and had to learn about. And it's a case that I guess wasn't talked about a lot. It was officially closed last year. And then due to recent outcry that's going on in America right now, it was reopened. And it turns out a lot of people don't know about it. So here to let people know it existed.
That sounds good. And when can we look forward to seeing that?
That'll be out Monday morning at the same time. That's 7 Pacific time, 7 a.m.
Okay. All right. So how can people follow you, keep track of what you're doing, find you on social media, follow you through the local Wegmans? How can they get to you?
I am on Twitter. That's the easiest way to find out what's going on with me. It's the easiest way to get a hold of me. It's Lady White Rabbit without the H in white because somebody took my name. Thank you.
I was going to ask you actually, but I forgot.
Yeah, making my life confusing. Thanks, Twitter. I'm also on Twitch, Lady White Rabbit, spelt correctly. So if you every now and then want to watch me play Saints Row 2 or 3, that's what I do there.
Awesome. All right, guys. So for our channel here, I am taking next week pretty much off. I may jump on for just a solo live stream, pretty much unannounced. But otherwise, you'll be rejoining me on Monday the 29th, where my guest will be Monty, who you will remember from the former Sausage Factory show. And you can reach out to me on the normal locations. Follow me on Twitter. Please, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. I usually don't beg, but you know what? We're at the point where I'm begging. No, not really. Just have fun and be safe. And we will see you in a week and a half, I guess. There it is. Have a good one. Bye.
He's a very old guy, knows a lot about horror.